wellness. I think it's something that came from my family because my great grandfather, who I've never met, he owned a bakery. So he started off with preparing beautiful stuff. And then I went into the field of food, nutrition, and health. The traditional, the true African diet has nothing to do with obesity, has nothing to do with bringing in all those diseases, those coronary diseases, those chronic diseases that we have now. What we have done over the years is give our valuable freely. As a people, we have given very valuable things freely, and the Westerners, sad to say, most of them would have taken it and water it down a bit, go through and sell it back to us.
Hi, I'm Obehi the author of the storytelling series for small businesses and content creators. In Obehi Podcast, we talk about the power of your story, your narrative, and why you should own your voice. Whether you are a small business owner, a content entrepreneur, or you simply want to build your influence, storytelling is probably going to be your best instrument to connect with your audience. So join the awakened few who are owning their voices. Now let's get started with today's episode.
Well, I am Joslyn Farray. I am an ordained minister, metaphysician, and author, as well as an award public speaker. My passion is health and wellness and well-being. A little bit about me. I am currently living in Trinidad and Tobago, but I'm from the beautiful, pure Spice Isle, Grenada. And what's another fun fact about Joslyn is that, well, I'm noted for my smile. I'm trying to smile a little less now, but I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
I love this smile. That is really beautiful. You never need to do anything about that because that open doors for you. You have a beautiful open teeth and you smile. That is wonderful. You can't do anything about that. Just let it go. All right, Joslyn, help me understand this. How did you get started as a wellness expert? Tell me, what moved you into that area?
That has been my life from the time I know myself. I've been into, apart from spirituality from my parents and my grandma, wellness. I think it's something that came from my family. Because my great grandfather, who I've never met, he owned a bakery. So he started off with preparing beautiful stuff. And then I went into the field of food, nutrition, and health. And that was by pure coincidence because I remember as a teenager in secondary school, I did not want to be in the food and nutrition class because I felt they were stereotyping it and making it feel as if it was for folks who didn't have a brain. And I felt that I had a good brain, so I wasn't going to. And the principal said to us, "Girls, come into the class so you can cook good food for your men." And I was so like, "What is he saying? I'm not going, I don't want to learn to cook." So that was I decided I was not going to do this food nutrition class. But eventually, for one reason or the other, we were paired with physics, and I did not like physics. So I ended up in the food and nutrition class. And what happened, I developed a love for the subject, not so much the cooking, although now I'm into the cooking because I came from a whole long line of great cooks also. But what I loved about the teacher, she delved into the science of the whole subject, and she made it fun and exciting beyond cooking. And of course, cooking is something really wonderful. So that is where it started from. And I got involved in teaching in the church, and I talk about food, nutrition, health, and wellness and spirituality. Um, you got me.
All right, I've got you. I've got you. I've got you. All right, now, okay, I am in Italy. Okay, originally I'm from Nigeria, which means, okay, I'm an African. Now, you are a part of the African diaspora. Now, tell me a bit about the foods that you eat in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm curious about that because that is your area.
Yes, it's a rich, we have a very rich heritage of food and a whole wide variety of food here because the culture here is diverse. So you have food from East Indian, you have uh, the Libyans, you have, and of course we have our Caribbean, a mix of indigenous and so on. And then now I'm introducing, we do have our African culture. We have food that we eat from Africa, but what I'm trying to do is to make people become a little bit more conscious of their heritage, because I think our food as Africans, we have gotten a bad rap. A lot of times when they talk about our food, they talk about soul food, and whenever they think about soul food, they associate soul food with frying and um, big slab of meat, and nothing wrong with that. But then they're talking about diabetes, you're talking about obesity, and all the things that are not good for us, the hypertension. So I think that our African food and our African heritage got a bad rap. And so, hence, the reason why my sole drive at this point is to really reclaim the great parts of our African heritage diet. Um,
That's very interesting. Actually, of obesity, that is something that I'm beginning to really pay attention to. Uh, in that it's not something that is really very used to us in Africa, to be really frank with you. Okay, I'm from Nigeria. Maybe I'm speaking of Nigeria. Maybe I'm speaking of a section of Nigeria where I grew up. Okay, sometimes we do have people that have a big stomach, as it were. Some people, I say, not not a whole lot of people. So that obesity, as it were, is not really something that is very common as we were growing up. Okay, now society are changing. The way people consume food is changing. So now it's beginning to become an issue. So that when you hear this obesity, something like, okay, maybe you look at the United States or as a good example where you have things like that. Um, because, okay, now this is the reason. Because in Africa, we consume a lot of vegetables, and then, okay, we also consume a lot of meat and tubers. And
yeah.
usually, this food are often there is often a lot of vegetables in it. It's not you don't usually eat in excess, no. So for this, you sort of and also because there is a lot of movement in Africa. If you are a typical African society, there is a lot of movement, which means the food you eat is going to really work. It's going to burn out. So it's going to burn out as sweat, as feces, or whatever. So you are not really. It's not obesity is not something that is really very common among many Africans. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm just saying what I'm seeing.
I am happy you brought up this, because what you find happening is that what we call the SAD diet, the standard American diet, is where all these things are associated to. But lots of folks, especially within the diaspora, they associate it with, of course, the blacks in America, and of once it's associated with the blacks in America, they automatically think it's from Africa, and that from research and what I've learned with the whole African heritage diet and what you're sharing here now, it's it's not the case, because the African diet is steeped in plant-based, highly plant-based, um, lots of greens, fruits, and so on. And in addition to that, I've also learned, while it's the meat is still part of the culture, it was more associated with giving flavor and more of a ceremonial nature, rather than it being a large part of the diet. So you are quite right. The traditional, the true African diet has nothing to do with obesity, has nothing to do with bringing in all those diseases, those coronary diseases, those chronic diseases that we have now. Those diseases came from SAD, the Standard American Diet. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. Because now you need to look at people who. Okay, now let me give you some example of food that we eat in my place. Let me be specific now, so I don't want to be overgeneralizing of Africa or of Nigeria, because Nigeria is more like many countries put together. We're talking of over 200 million people. Its size is 3 times the size of Italy, so it's really a huge country, no? And also a diverse country in terms of also the climate. In Nigeria, we have more than one type of climate. That is to tell you how big it is, no? But in my part of the south of Nigeria, we eat things like beans. We eat a lot of vegetables like okra, and we eat a lot of fruits like mango, pawpaw, pineapple, like cashews, like pear. All these are very rich food they're not going to make you obese, as it were. So I'm just trying to say that because we also have a lot of dry fruits, no? Pan carne, then you have the carne itself, the oil from palm oil. Then you have, we eat pounded yam also, because this pounded yam is coming from yam. We have cassava. We eat also maize and the rest of all. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is that because the high concentration of the food that we eat are vegetables and fruits, we can actually say that traditionally our food leads to obesity. And also because, I repeat again, because there is a lot of movement in Africa. So, yeah, I don't think it can be associated to us.
You have me so excited here with this. It's the truth. It's so true even in terms of, because one of the things that we are trying to share with folks is the pyramid, and within the pyramid, all the foods that you call, including the movement, because it's very important to note. And I'm happy you stressed again that movement, because one of the things that we're working on and trying to get our folks involved in is really, apart from the eating, is to get involved with the movement. I remember my great grandma actively involved. She didn't used to go to the gym. And it's important to bring that point up too, because within my culture, within the folks here, we love to bring up the excuses for movement. We would say, "Oh, well, I don't have money to go to the gym, or I don't have a new outfit." So we make it more of a fashion something rather than just the health and the movement. And movement can be anything. Movement can be dancing in your home. Movement can be climbing up and down the stairs. Movement can be walking in your garden. So it's important for folks to really zero in on that and the movement. And I love when you talk about the greens and the vegetables. Oh boy, you have me going. An important thing too is to know the herbs and the spices, because one of the things we have to deal with quite a lot here in terms, and one of the things that folks like to say, "Oh, I don't like healthy," because one, it's not tasty, and two, they're talking about the salt. They find, if I have to leave out salt in my diet, then what kind of food what are you giving to me? I want to enjoy my food. And that's one of the things that the African diet have. It's noted for the spices and the flavor. Mwah!
Thank you for that. It's about story. Here we pay a lot of attention to storytelling. We believe that storytelling is really powerful. We are really consuming good food, and we know how to consume good food because you know, um, it depends on who is telling the story. It really depends on who is telling the story because if the story is told from an African perspective, you're going to have a different understanding than when it is told from a European or a Western perspective who is trying to describe Africa as people who maybe with everything negative. If you go to a traditional society anywhere in the world, I think you will hardly find obesity as a way of life, no? As a common characteristics. Whether you go to India or you go to Native Americans or you go to some people, even in some Asian people in Europe. But I think obesity is something of the current time, and that is based on the standard food system that have been introduced, which is full of sugars and also with over processed food because it's no longer it doesn't contain all the nutrients that we used to consume as a people because food used to be really very colorful, at least from the way I see it, from where I'm coming from. Our food is very colorful, and it's colorful not because we put color in it. It's colorful because of the ingredient, the different ingredient that we put in the food. I remember for example, my grandmother, because I grew up with my grandmother. My grandmother don't cook anyhow. She take her time to gather the ingredients for her food. If she want to prepare melon or a goosey, that is what Nigerian people call it. She doesn't just go to the market and just buy a goosey that cook. She's gonna put fish. She will get the fish. She will put the fish in a place where hang fish and it will be smoked so that it will take some time for the fish to be ready for the soup. She need to add some mushroom. She will get. By the time all the things are ready, there are very many. And when she cook this food, oh my God, you are going to love it. You are going to love it. Very colorful, beautiful, with beautiful aroma. She didn't learn it from any other place other than the local culture. So our diet is very rich. It's
Oh,
really,
yeah.
really very rich. All right. Now,
What our culture is, you talk, so when you talk about your grandma, oh boy, you're talking about cooking with love, cooking from the heart, cooking with a purpose, cooking
absolutely.
to nourish not just only the body, but the entire being, the soul, and everything else. And that cooking, as you talk about the color and everything else, that cooking brought about, you're talking about bringing in the family and friendship, bringing in bringing in the whole, as I said, the whole spirit of the whole spirit of the person. And I lost my thought on what I was going to say, but I love the idea that you brought in the colors, because that, and not just artificial colors, but the real colors of the food. So when you got your plate, you saw everything. There's a good representation of what life is, and a good representation of the nutrients. uh you no longer, it's not just a matter of the processed food where you get just all the salty. And one of the things I want to highlight with this, what you brought up in terms of your grandmother shopping and how she prepared the food, the thinking behind it. Also, it's not about the processed food where you just pick up food from a plastic bag and it's full of all the preservatives. But there, what you're having is the food from the land given back. So we're talking about oneness with humans, with the earth. There's a whole lot going on there that is not artificial, and it's pure. So it's a give and take. Yeah, and a
Absolutely.
respect.
And that kind of food will never make you become obese. Never. It will never because it's so complete. And I think when the West want to sell their dietary, their diet system to Africa, of course, they don't have what we have. And sometimes we don't also have what they have. But the point is that they want to dominate even our market of food, what kind of food that we should eat, the kind of food crop that we should grow. Because you see, at the end of the day, it's all about control. It's all about money. Somebody want to control the other people. That is why. Because now, if we go to examine the ingredient, the content of the food that we eat, looking at maybe the standard American diet or even the European diet, why not? Okay, in Europe they eat better than in the United States. There's no doubt about that. That is obvious. We are eating Mediterranean here. But if I take up a pizza, for example, which is classic Italian food, and I take out the plate that is prepared by my grandmother, there is not even a comparison at all in terms of the ingredients, in terms of the richness of that food. They are not near at all. That of my grandmother, if you rate it 100, pizza is going to be maybe something like 30 or 25, because they are not even near at all. And this plate that is prepared by I'm just using my grandmother as an example, no, is so rich. And it's only one plate. It's not like maybe, for example, in Italy or in France or in some other European country where you have maybe the first, the second, or the third. We have one plate, but that plate is very rich. That's what I just want to say, that if you were to sell that food in the market, it would be very difficult for you to buy it cheap. You cannot buy it cheap. And of course, to be able to sell that kind of food to the people, you're going to be really rich. So what I'm saying, therefore, is that in the rural area in Africa, people eat very rich. They eat very rich food. But in the urban center, maybe let me remain within Nigeria. Say in Lagos, for example, or in Abuja, or in Port Harcourt, you go to the city, you can't see that kind of rich food. But what if we have a thought around it that we want to continue to eat rich food? We could look for a way to organize it. But that, of course, is not going to be in the interest of the metropole or the Western government who want to control our diet system, because they don't have the ingredient that we used to. My mother went to the local bush to collect some of the snail that she's going to put inside the food. No? They don't have that. They don't have that for us. They want us to buy from them. They want us to abandon what we used to eat, so that we can eat what they provide. And what they provide, of course, we can see now, they are over-processed food. That is why maybe in countries like in Nigeria now, like in the urban center to be precisely, we're beginning to see obesity growing up with the so-called big men who are eating nothing more than just plastic that is coming from Europe and coming from America, because, okay, it's an American food, it's a European food. But have you really taken the time to reflect on what is the content of the food that you are eating? So I think that is where you come in. It's important to talk about food nutrition. What is the content?
It's so very important. As you talk about, you get the wide variety on the plate, because on the plate, one, you want to ensure that you don't have no plastic. It's important to know that these processed food, most of them are plastic. You want to have the real greens, you want to have the fruits, the tubers, the nuts or the whole grains. You want to include there the fish or the seafood, because in our Caribbean islands, you talk about Africa, but within the Caribbean islands too, we are surrounded by the sea, and we get our source of animal product from there also. So you want to include a little bit of that, as you said, the poultry, and of course a wee bit later on, and when we look at the plate, at the tip of a tiny bit of sweet, and of course you can also get your sweet from your food. So there is no need to have those artificial sweeteners and so on, because you have it naturally from the foods that you eat. So I'm happy that you talk about the whole artificial stuff and us not succumbing again to that sad diet of you eating all these processed food and food from. I mean, yes, we are in the modern age. One might want to argue where you may not have the time to do all of that. But with the coming of health coaches, with the coming of people working from home and all those things, you can get an opportunity to start to prepare food from scratch, and even to start doing your own homegrown gardening. So yes.
The idea that we don't have time to prepare good food sometimes it's just a justification for our laziness, because because now we eat what we are, and what we are is what we eat. So if that is true, if you eat rubbish, then you're going to become rubbish at a point. So if you don't want to become rubbish, then you have every time they want to prioritize what is going to enter into your stomach. That is very important. Instead of this this color this coloring thing, they put water, put some colors inside, some sweetening inside, and they call it beverages. And we are happy. It's coming from Europe. It's coming from the. Oh, come on.
You're so right with that. So many times we think that the food coming from Europe, from the Western world, is superior to ours, when it is totally inferior. And of course, you talk about we eat, what we eat becomes us, and it's the truth. If you begin, and that's why the disease keep coming on, because if you're eating to this sad diet, eventually you become that. You become you have to deal with the diabetes, you have to deal with the hypertension, you have to deal with the obesity, you have to deal with not being able to walk up a flight of stairs properly. There's so much things that you have to deal with, which is not pleasurable, which is not wholesome, which affects your thinking. The type of food you eat in terms of affects your emotions and how you deal with members and colleagues on the work. If you eat to the artificial way, your brains will deal with that. And whereas you might be able to diffuse a situation quite easily, when you are on the sad diet, you blow up. The anger come in readily. You don't think through you don't go through a process easily. And that's where you have all the short-temperedness and everything. Whereas if you are on a great African heritage diet, you tend to work out things. And that's why our foreparents were able to withstand all the things that they went through. They were able to withstand it because they were able to use the love, the perseverance, the optimism that came from the type of food they had also. And they were able to forgo all of that.
Thank you for sharing that.
All of that. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
All right. Now, tell me a bit about what do you really do within the area of nutrition awareness? Spend some time telling us about that.
In terms of nutrition awareness, I do a lot. I do a lot of work on social media. I have cool down a bit. I go to the churches, do lots of lecturing within the churches, do workshops, community groups, all those sort of retreats. I am an educator there, so I would go and share with mostly women, but men are also welcome, and I share with them the different types of things that they can do to distress one, and one of the things, of course, I never leave out is our connection with spirit and our ability to listen to our heart and use our intuitive intelligence. So that's one of the things I stressed on. Use your intuitive intelligence to help you. And that's how, again, going right back to your great-grandmother or your mom, or for parents, they use their intuitive intelligence to prepare their meals. Yes. And now science have been catching up with that. But it's I recently I heard one of the Westerners were talking, one of those, and I literally was on. Oh, I cried because these were some of the things that my grandma taught us about the herbs and the spices and the type of the way we prepare our meals and how we can use it to heal ourselves. And I cried because I remember my mom, who were influenced heavily by the Western culture, at times would put down my my great grandma with some of the things because at the time she did not have all the scientific explanation for it. She just knew that it was working and it is good. And now I look back at all the tradition, and I were at the there were times I was disrespectful of my grandma, not in a terrible way, but when I refused to use some of the things she was sharing with me. And that's what I cry for because now you have to pay. And we talk about the Western world using our stuff, and they would have watered it down, and you have to pay large sums of money to get the same thing that we had. So we need to embrace our culture, our African heritage, reclaim our power.
You
We
need to
are
say that again.
motherland.
You need to say that again and again, because yeah, you're right. It have all been about profit, about money, the commodification of African product, of African and of African culture. Everything about us is commodified. In that now we are probably not even taking the time to understand what is happening. So for this, we are suffering from it. In that, like you said, Don, you have a history. You have refused to learn the history by simply listening to your grandmother or your grandfather or the elders that have grown up, that have learned this from their ancestors and their ancestors and their ancestors. Basically, your story, you have forsaken it, following other people's step. Now, somehow you realize that you have lost it because that is not your step. Because you cannot compete in another man's world with his own rules and you want to win him. It doesn't work. It's not going to work. That is what many Africans and African diaspora are doing. In that we want to win the European or the Westerners in their own game. A game we don't even understand how it is set up. We are going to lose. So the way we can win is to either know the game, rewrite the game according to our senses and sensibility, or refuse the game and propose a different game, our own game. This way we can talk because this way we know what we are talking about. So what we have now is that the Europeans went to Africa to study African history, African culture, African way of life. They repropose it back to us. We need to pay them to learn something that you could have just go to your grandfather and ask, Daddy, how did you do this? Why is it like this? Because they told us that our history is useless. Our culture is stupid. Our way of life is ignorance. But if that is the truth, why did they come to learn it? How did you come to learn ignorance?
Exactly. Oh,
You
Lord.
see? So it takes a lot of time to be able to decode some of these things. And it's a huge responsibility on our part as Africans and as African in the diaspora to understand that we are going to suffer if we don't return to our roots in the sense of trying to understand what is the setup of life according to African tenets. Then we can talk with the other people to say, this is the way I see. It doesn't mean we are going to be in conflict with the rest of the world. It simply means that as Africans, this is the way we see it. Because
Exactly.
the European doesn't see the world according to the Arabs. They see it according to the Europeans. So why should I, an African, see the world according to the European? I'm not a European. I'm an African.
You are, you have me all over. I'm so excited because you are so right. And one of the things, I mean, and being from the Caribbean, for me, it really hit me hard. I still think the folks who are in the original motherland. Africa has it better. In the Caribbean, I remember as a young child, I struggled with deciding, what should I? And you feel they begin to make you feel inferior. You begin to feel that whatever you have was not good enough. And I have had to, up until recently, truly reclaim and step into that power of knowing, but what I have is good. It's excellent. It's wonderful. And you talk about, they're saying, this thing keep flying out of my head. Maybe I don't need to say it here, but one of the things that came as one fly and the other came in is the richness. And for us, we live in paradise here in the Caribbean. We are surrounded by wonderful seas, so many things. We have peace. And what has been happening is we are neglecting all of that, thinking it's not good, want to rush to another man's island and culture. And the type of food, so many, what peeved me and hurt my heart, folks making us as feel as if our products, our things here are inferior and not good. And a lot of the times now, what I've found, even as I taught within our school system, we had to keep encouraging the students to, let's use our local food, let's eat local. They always felt, it is so much better to have it in the can or to have it in a package. And while it might work well at some point to have preserve, it's about how it becomes commonplace now. It is the in thing now to have the processed food be the mainstay of one's diet rather than an optional something that you can do when you really need to do that. And it saddens me because our whole culture within the Caribbean, and I'm speaking specific to the Caribbean, both here in Trinidad and Tobago and Grenada, where I have first-hand knowledge. You hear the women talk, and they're preparing meals for their family so many times. You see the lack of. I'm right now, even in terms of I'm helping to promote and talk about African heritage diet. I'm not seeing a lot of people rush into it. But if I'm not seeing a whole lot, I mean, and that is sad when folks still do not want to embrace your heritage, not know about where you came from. You find, I'm looking at my case. I'm just going to say this here. So they would embrace someone. If I say I'm from, because of the way I talk, sometimes I remembered when I just entered into this country, they were asking me if I came from America. And I said, no, I'm from Grenada. And you see the whole attitude towards me and the knowledge and what I was sharing shifted. And that mindset, it saddens me that we still think that we as a nation, as a people, we are not good enough, and that somebody else's culture is better than ours, and that we can only accept it when it comes through another culture. I'm not even going to get into color and all of those things now. But it saddens me when we have been so brainwashed into no longer wanting to know about our history, no longer viewing it as important. I remember at one point, and again, I'm really trusting and more because you have seen an upsurge. So I'm saying, but we still have people not embracing the African heritage. I've heard Caribbean people say, "I'm from the Caribbean, not Africa." Duh. We all as human beings, you originated from the motherland. And if you one who had doubt about it, and the science is there. So it's no wondering where you from, or so what good thing, going back to the diet now and the food, if we all originate from the motherland, Africa, then where would you want to go and get your food from? The Westerners, sorry to say that, the sad diet is a watered down. You want to get your meat from Africa.
Now, talking of the heritage, I would like you to spend some time explaining your cookie class, the Taste African Heritage Cookie Class. Tell me more about that one. I think people want to know.
The taste of African heritage is just as the name suggested. It gives one a taste of their culture. What it does, it's more than just food. It's more than just a diet, because what it brings in is family and friendship. It brings in, of course, good food. It brings in the whole curriculum takes in physical or active movement. It takes in music, spirituality. We bring in the artistic creation. So these are the whole curriculum. While we talk about food within the curriculum, we take in the culture, and we bring in the richness of the motherland within that curriculum. So of course we have the plate or the pyramid, and within we teach folks about the greens, where it came from, how you can use it. Then you have, of course, the fruits, the vegetable, the tubers, the nuts. Then we have our beans and whole grains. So we give you an explanation of each of that. And what we were talking about earlier in regards to the herbs and the spices. So instead of you just having the processed food and the salts and all those things that lends to hypertension and other ailments, what you have within the African heritage curriculum is you learning about the different herbs and spices. You get an appreciation for it and using it in your food. So when you talk about healthy, or when some folks go to the doctor who may have already ill-treated their bodies through no fault of theirs, maybe, and the doctor say, you now have to begin to eat healthy. You got to make adjustment to your diet. You got to get omit the salt and all those things. The African heritage diet helps you with that, because you still maintain the taste and the flavor of your food, because you now know how to use the herbs, you now know how to use the spices, and you also now learn how to prepare it traditionally. Another great thing about the African heritage curriculum, it caters to everyone. So whether you think you are rich, quote unquote, rich, and have a whole lot of money to go around, whether, quote unquote, you think you are poor and don't have a whole lot to go around, it caters to everyone. You can prepare it on firewood. You can prepare those meals without any flame. You can prepare those meals on your electrical, or whatever it is you have, whatever kitchen you have, whether it's a sophisticated kitchen or a humble kitchen, whatever it is, we cater to everyone. Because what I've learned is that whatever you have, wherever you are, it is enough and it is rich. In terms of someone might ask, well, who is it for? Again, the curriculum is for anyone, everyone. It's for the preteens and the teens who may want to learn about cooking. It's for them. It's for someone who is interested in learning about their culture and the rich heritage of their culture. It is for the elderly who may have had a taste of the African diet before and they are beginning to crave to have more of it. It is for those folks who may feel that, I want to celebrate. So you can do a cooking club. It's for, I think sometimes when we get things, they taught us that, when you get things free, you do not have an appreciation for it. So I think that they love the idea of expense. So you have folks, if something don't have a high price tag to it, they think it's not valuable. And that's not true. It's invaluable. There are some things, love, you can't put a price tag on love. You cannot put a price tag on the earth. And a lot of the times there are other cultures, and then the richness of the African culture is that they give freely. And we have been taught, well, let me not go there. I'm not going there.
You are free to let your intuition go. Just go on and speak your mind. We are here for it.
We have been brainwashed. We have been taught to give. We give what we have done over the years is give our valuable freely. As a people, we have given very valuable things freely, and the Westerners, sad to say, most of them would have taken it and water it down a bit, go through and sell it back to us. And you see it in the food also. I thank God that a lot of us have come out of that mindset. A good example is our cocoa, our we have capitalized on some of the foods now and are using it to increase our wealth. Before we were not doing that. We would allow another culture to come in, get it for $0 sometimes or next to nothing, and process it, and then we buy it back, and we think it is better. But we are coming away from the mindset. Lots of education. Our folks need to be educated some more, and I'm thinking that's where us here now as educators, the podcast, you sharing the stories, because it's in the stories that folks truly get to develop an appreciation for their culture. It is as we talk about, in the music, and that's what the whole curriculum of the African Heritage Diet to, as we become aware and we begin to put it back into the stories, and we begin to tap it begin to get into our subconscious. That's the only how that we will begin to change and develop a true appreciation for what and who we are, and reclaim our power.
All right. Now, how can people reach you? Now they have heard you. You did this long explanation of who you are, what you do, why you are doing this highly valuable, why you are on this highly valuable mission about African nutrition and how to eat better. Now they want to connect with you. How can they reach you? Where can they find? Where can they find you?
Oh, I'm on most of the social media platforms, so you would find me on Facebook. I have my personal page, Reverend Joslyn Farray Peer, and a business page, Reverend Joslyn, the Intuitive Wellbeing Educator. I am on IG as the Intuitive Wellbeing Institute. I'm on LinkedIn as Reverend Joslyn, the Intuitive Wellbeing Educator. I also have a website, www.reverendjoslyn.link. So you'll find me there. I think I've exhausted. Yes, that's most of the social media platform. Yes.
That's interesting. At least wherever they are, they should be able to reach you. You are in many places. That's fine. All right.
Yes.
Now, Jocelyn, what would be your final thought here, considering what we have discussed today?
Yes, what I really want to leave with our folks is that, especially us, as we're talking the African heritage diet, I want to leave with our folks that Africa is a motherland. Everyone else, we all came from the motherland. We all, black, white, red, yellow, whatever. And so you want to celebrate that. You want to focus on that. You want to begin to pattern your lifestyle from that rather than think it's inferior, rather than seeing it as something of that you have to pity. Because a lot of I'm could only speak from my experience. So my experience way back when from from the motherland was hungry people, starving people, no education, sores, and that is a far cry from the truth. What a picture I have of my heritage is richness. It's education. It's oneness with the earth. It's we taking and the earth we giving back. It's easy if you're not exploiting. It's about health. It's not about obesity. It's about movement, all those things we spoke about before. That's what I want to leave with folks. Be proud of where you came from, of who you are, what you are. Be proud of that. Know that you are the real deal. The food that you're eating that comes from the motherland, the method of preparation, it's the real thing. It's not inferior. So we want to get back to those things. We want to get back where we can sit and have the real liquor. That's one of the things in the African heritage diet. We talk about liquor. And before, when our foreparents talk about liquor, we were talking about the greens to drink it, not the alcohol to destroy. The green liquor, and you can add it to your drinks. The green drinks which they're selling to us. Get the real drink, the green drink, the liquor. Place it in the food. Or drink it like that. And you would find it is flavorful. It is tasty. It is healthy. And for both the male and the female version of humankind, you will be able to know what the real love is all about. We're talking about vibrancy, brilliance. So don't let me get on here.
Thank you so much for that, Jocelyn. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the sharing. And we can see that you're really talking, you're pouring your heart out. And of course, we do have enough time to talk about this thing. We do. So we'll come back again next time to explore some other area where you're adding value to the community. We really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi Podcast. and share with your friends who might need it. Thank you so much for listening, and talk to you in the next episode.